topic of the talk is research that continues to inspire the future. Enjoy the conversation and see you later.
Thank you. Can you hear us? Yeah? Okay. So first of all, it's a great pleasure for me being here with these two legends and also friends now. And I wrote some questions divided in 3 topics, which is research, product, and fabrics, and also manufacturing, to talk and hear what they think about all these kind of things. So, Nigel, first, your brand and the collaboration you do are the essence of your vision. I know you're traveling the world in search of garments, fabric that later you reproduce. And everything you do gives your product a very specific flavor. Can you please describe us your way to research when you go?
Yeah, well, when I start to research, obviously I have to have a concept in my mind. So I'm always looking for historic events. So, for instance, if it was, you know, the Everest collection and Edmund Hillary getting to Everest first in 1953, that would go bing for 2003, 50th anniversary. As it is this year, for 2023, it's a 70th anniversary and also a 20th anniversary of me doing the limited edition. So I always look for a hook, and that's the first thing. And then, once I've got the hook, then I know which vintage pieces to pull out, and I also know the type of fabrics that I want. So they all go together as one thing, and I can't work any other way. So concepts first, then the vintage pieces, then the fabric. And I love fabric, I'm fabric driven as well, but I tend to use fabric which is real cotton or wool or cotton and wool mixed. I'm not really using synthetic fabric, but Miles will talk all about that because that's his bag. I'm more about pure fabrics, and that's how I do it.
Okay, great, thanks. Miles, you have worked for Patagonia, Levi's, XX among other brands as a creative director, and you work on archives. Levi's for first. Can you tell us how is the sensation to work on an archive and find the garments and then retrace them and reproduce for new collections and stuff?
I mean, I don't think I could have done a lot of my work if I didn't work so closely with the archive, and I think I've had an amazing education through working with archives because I've worked on a lot of reproduction. So I think then to add a layer to that, what was really important to me was to analyse not just the overall look of a garment, but the actual fabric itself. So designing for me always starts at designing from fibre. So to work really closely with mills on being able to re-execute a fabric, which sometimes is like, 150 years old, but you have to use modern techniques to be able to match an old fabric. So that's always been really fascinating to me, doing that kind of in-depth research. And then when I went to go and work at Patagonia, one of the first things I did was help them set up an archive of Patagonia's clothing. So then the design team then has an archive to reference for the work that they were doing. Because I was saying to them when I first started, I said, how are you coming up with your ideas? Where are your ideas coming from? And they were going, we just went around the stores and we were looking at what's going on in the world at the moment. But I was like, but when are you looking back? What stage do you look back? So I always thought it was super important that, like Nigel says, you start with a concept and then you go vintage. Well, that's the same time as you go archive. It's the same point. You've got to have what's going on in the market, a balance between balance. There's got to be some balance.
Can I interact here?
Yeah.
So for me, I'm never really looking at fashion. I mean, obviously, I look at it at a distance, but really, the vintage and the concept and all the ideas. I'm also, because I have a very big library of fantastic books, so I don't actually look at fashion at all. I look afterwards. So it's key for me to keep authentic and original.
Yeah.
And I think you're doing the same, right?
Yeah, similar. And I really think about the silhouette. The silhouette can just be whatever is going on at that point.
I mean, if you do a collaboration, for instance, then you have to think about the collaboration more in depth, and you can't be so stupid as what you might be with your own brand. So obviously we have to conform more when we do collaborations.
Yeah. Okay. And talking about details and reproduction, and also for inspiration, it happened that you find some suppliers that have already material to work on. Did you find suppliers that already show you?
Yeah, because sometimes you'll see a supplier showing a particular fabric that suddenly just makes your brain go, oh my god, that would be the most fantastic fabric to do that particular kind of product for. And then your imagination starts going just from a fabric point. But I think we're always looking, I suppose, for different ways to get inspired. So the fabric, it's like, you know, it can sometimes make a whole collection happen, just one fabric, and then you're finding things to go with it.
Yeah. So the inspiration never starts from a proper inspiration, but it's a work in progress, touching materials and looking for that.
I tell you where inspiration doesn't come from numbers. If someone's like going, right, I need business.
I think if you don't love fabric as a designer, I think you have a problem. I think at the fashion colleges, for instance, they don't seem to teach them about fabrics, you know, they don't have, so when fashion students come to work for me, they never know anything about the fabrics. They do the drawings, not with any thought of the fabric, and then they put the fabric to them. For me, it's always 3D, it's three things or four things. And I love fabric, you know, so I've done every Première Vision, almost. So I started 1971 at the first shows. So I've done hundreds of fabric fairs. I love fabric, and I know all the mills.
So
and I go to Japan 4 times a year, and I'm working with all the mills when I'm there as well.
Okay. And which was the country where you find the most beautiful piece of your archive?
Well,
if I can answer.
I mean, I've got 4,000 vintage pieces. It took me from 1978. Funny enough, Sir Paul Smith gave me the first vintage piece in 1978. He actually worked for me from around 73 to 75, and we were very good friends. And then he became a designer in 78, 79, and we were both in Paris together at the old Sen show. And he brought this beautiful jacket to me, and it was a vintage garment. And I said, where did you get that vintage piece? He said, Nigel, you should do something like this. And that was when I started to do outerwear. So anyway, I forgot what was the question again.
Where did you find the most important and iconic
that was the most
garment?
important piece that I ever got from Paul Smith. But obviously Japan's where it's all out. And of course America as well, you know, but Japan's fantastic. But we do have some very good people in London as well, who have great pieces. So, you know, I mean...
If you shop around, if you go around, you can find amazing.
Shop everywhere in the world, really.
But nowhere's as good as Japan for the whole the retail experience, the actual shopping.
Nothing
there's nowhere else in the world like that.
Like Japan.
Yeah, because there's another layer to it. There's a ceremony. It's not just like looking through racks of old product. It's just the whole handling, the way that you feel like you're buying a gift from them, even though you're paying for it. It's just the way it's done. It's just wonderful. You can get really excited about the things that you buy from Japan. But also, if you go to the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, you know, for me, being able to do both Japan and the Rose Bowl, that was perfect. That was the best way to kind of shop vintage.
The main problem with the vintage now is it's extremely expensive.
And also, it's also finished because I think
you can pay thousands for, you know, for one piece. So you need a big budget. You need a lot of good savings to collect a good vintage collection.
And there are still good pieces around because I think
there's amazing pieces. Everywhere I travel I see amazing pieces, but it's like the 3,000, the 5,000, the 10,000 pounds, you know, they're ridiculous prices. I mean, if you want the you know, the type 1 jacket and the type 2 jacket. I was offered the type, I think it was Emily, was it type 1 or type 2? In type 1. So I was offered a type 1, but he said he wanted 3,000 euros for it. It was down in the south of France where I saw it. I thought I would buy it, but then it didn't look completely like, you know, a first one. It looked more like a second one, so I didn't buy it in the end. And when I checked it out, it didn't look like it was a type 1, you know. So yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't get them, but just knowing that they exist. I mean, it's always really nice to have your own personal archive, but sometimes I worry that there's a lot of stuff sitting around in boxes and people aren't getting the benefit of it.
Okay, so talking about the vintage garment, we see that when we have a vintage garment, maybe which is 60 years old, it's still doing good, you know, because fabric were well done. Probably the garments that will be done now today will be not so lasting like they were. So how is important for you the quality of the fabric and the making of a fabric for a garment that is made now to last maybe for 60 years?
Yeah,
it's very important.
As durable and as, you know, purposefully strong as possible. You know, just want it to last forever.
Yeah.
Don't want to put fabrics or washes out there. Because I just think it's criminal really when people buy a really good fabric and then they wash the bejesus out of it.
Yeah.
And you just think that's only going to last for a couple of years and then that's going to be like bust up. I think that whole thing that we used to do about doing like vintage washes and everything, chucking loads of chemicals all over it and everything, and killing it, like literally killing it. I was like, criminal, absolute criminal, but we don't do that anymore. So now we buy fabrics which are really good quality that are going to last a lifetime.
Yeah. I think for me the vintage is not just for the style, it's often for the fabric. To be able to reproduce the fabric, because what's lovely about vintage pieces, they're always pure. They're pure wool or pure cotton, there's no synthetics, so that suits me down to the ground. And also I'll buy a vintage piece just for the colour. So if I see a really good navy or a really good green and it'll have a nice wash in it, I think, well, I like the wash and I like the colour, so I just buy the piece. So sometimes I buy the same vintage piece 3 or 4 times because it has different things to it. And it also has different patches on it, different repairs. So when I look through my library, I think, God, I've got 5 pieces of that same garment. It's got 5 different ideas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great. And so I know that you reproduce also old fabrics with the suppliers from England especially.
Yeah, like Miles.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, within working with Levi's, I mean, you know, their fabrics are unbelievable. So yeah, I like working with original fabrics from the original garments and then try and reproduce them. So I might go to karaoke. For instance, we've just done a denim like this. And when I went to karaoke, they had an old cushion with some pure Japanese denim with a stripe printed. It looked really good. So I asked them would they reproduce that for me. So, you know, that was just a bit of luck. It was a cushion in their office. It was about 30 years old. It was a piece of denim with printed stripes. I thought that was better than woven for me today. It's a bit more contemporary.
Yeah. Okay. And regarding the way of make new cottons and I know that you are very into agriculture technologies and experimentation on the making of fabric. Can you talk me about this? Talk us.
Well, I think because the world's changed a bit and people are more conscious now on the decisions, you know, we're all responsible now for all the decisions that we make through design. I think when it comes to fabric now, we have to know where everything comes from. So when working on any development of a new fabric, I think it's always really important to know, not just go to a mill and buy a fabric, but we have to now know where the cotton came from, how it's dyed, what the process is of that making. And it, you know, there's so much story and content there, and there's a lot to kind of learn about, and that would really help, like Nigel said, about all the new designers that don't seem to know very much about fabric. We ought to know a lot about what goes into it, because in the end, when the consumer comes back to us and asks questions, we've got to have all the answers. And you don't want to like flood them and bamboozle them with too much information, but the information still needs to be there. And even if that, I know when I'd love it one day if we could just get this down to like pictures, so it doesn't have to be like, you know, pages and pages of information, but if you could just break the process down into like four pictures, say, where people can see where in the world and how the cotton is grown and who grew it. And I think it's also, for me, it's about having some engagement with people. Like, I love to work hands-on with people. So I want to visit the cotton farm, and I want to see where it's spun, and I want to learn about all the techniques that go into it. But we just have to open that up, because we're all talking about transparency. Yeah. But I think a lot of people are scratching their heads with what does that mean?
Exactly, and there is, as you say, that change in the direction of people, you know, sensitivity for the fabric. Also, if I think personally that the most companies are not so sensitive regarding materials, etc. And there is, for me, still a lot of work to do for people for students to teach them, because they will be the new generation that will make the change. And because I divide the market in three sectors for me, which is the bigger brands, which are the ones who are more into, you know, doing good things well done. The luxury fashion, okay, which is take care of made in Italy, for example, or well done. And the rest, which is the most, is I don't want to call it anymore fast fashion. I call it fashion, okay, because it's like everything is fast now. So do you think that there is the need to improve this sensitivity, to make maybe the bigger brands and the luxury fashion brands more strong into choice of fabrics, material, washes, or whatever it is, to achieve a product which is more safe for the planet and for the people?
Yeah, you're talking about the fashion and the high fashion.
Yes, I think that the most brands I see are not so sensitive. For my sensation, okay. So
can I just come in? I mean,
yeah.
I think that problem is for me is, and I don't want people throwing eggs at me, but I really just love fabric for what it looks like and how it performs in my eyes. So I'm using British fabric. There's a lot of Harris tweed, a lot of Ventile, a lot of oilcloths. So I know that they're not, well, the oilcloth's a bit troublesome, but for me, it has to look good, okay? And I make, a lot of my production is made in England and Japan, so it's quite ethical, it's properly made. There's nothing deep that I don't know about there. So I make a pretty pure product. As I keep saying, I'm not interested in synthetic. He's the expert in synthetic, and he's worked with a company that do great stuff, but it doesn't look interesting enough for me. So for me, it has to look great. I don't care what it's made of, but if it doesn't look great, I can't use it. So I've been doing it a long time, so I have to stick to what I know. And so that's what I believe in.
There's a lot of reasons why I got quite into working with synthetics, was just from a practical point of view, and it was mostly about strength and durability and the weight of the garment. That's how synthetics kind of virtually crept in, because they were like bulletproof fabrics. But I'm like Nigel, really. I mean, at the end of the day, I prefer cotton. And we did some quite interesting studies when I was at Patagonia as well, about if you had to run into your home, if it was burning down, and rescue some items of your clothing, what would you rescue? And it was always the natural fibres. So it was always the wool, or the cotton, the knitwear, things like that. Those were or a pair of jeans, you know, that's what people wanted. They didn't want the waterproof coat, even though they respected it and they thought that served me well. I'm glad that I had that. But they don't love synthetic. People love natural fibre.
Yeah. Also, if we look at the garments of that needs a technical aspect. In the past they were natural fibers like wools, etc., because they are thermoregulator, etc. And so always going back to students and the new generation, which are the skills that are most important for you today, and to transfer to the new generation, what you will suggest to them regarding research and materials, etc.
What advice to the future?
Yes, for the students of today, for they to be more.
I think it's not necessary, because someone was asking me this question the other day about what does the future of the denim brand look like, and I was saying I don't know whether it's going to look that different, considering that it doesn't look that different now to how it looked 150 years ago. You know, slightly.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have the waistband buttons and the cinch on the back and all of that, but it hasn't changed that much, so why would it change in the next 20 years? But I think it's about the substance that goes into it. So now we have to do a lot more research, we have to know where everything comes from. But the other end of that, which I think is super important, is that we now have to be, as brands, responsible for that product that was sold to somebody at the end of its life, meaning that if ever it breaks, we'll repair it for you. If ever, you know, you can't wear it anymore or something's happened to it, we will help you with it, and if we can't, and it has to be recycled, we will also do that for you. So it's putting a lot of pressure back on the brands, and it's a lot more work, but it has to be done.
Yeah.
Now or in the near future, but it has to be done.
Okay. What do you think about it?
Everything he says is absolutely right, but you know, you can't teach your dog old tricks really. So for me, as I said before, all the things he said are correct. Like the Ventile fabric is wonderful. It went up Everest in 1953, but it still frays on the cuffs. I don't know what to say about that, but you can have a Ventile jacket for 10 years and it starts to fray. Do you return that? Do you give the customer the money back? I just don't know. Maybe Miles can tell me.
I don't think you give them the money back. But maybe what you can think about is if you've done product testing and you know that after a certain while there are going to be some regular things that
happens with cotton.
That happens with cotton.
Oh, I love that.
I know, but then what about, can it not be some sort of repair kit that either comes with product or that you have yourself, so that there's something that can be sent out to somebody at home that can just literally be applied onto a garment that gives it another 10 years? You know, bicycle repair kits, I mean, it's like that.
Cotton looks great repaired, and nothing looks better than denim. Like, you've got a 1930s denim jacket on. Repair on that jacket looks amazing. So, yeah, I think it enhances the style anyway. So, I think it's good if you use pure cotton, because you know you're going to have to enhance it at some stage, especially keeping a lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And now we would like to talk about the companies that produce garments. Okay.
Sorry?
The companies that produce garments. Okay. Okay, like suppliers, etc. When I was a young pattern maker, everything was into the same company. The designer, the pattern makers, the technical office, so it was easy to create a collection because we were all talking about it in the same place. In the 90s, more or less, everything started to be delocalized, you know, so the company maybe has the design office and then patterns somewhere and fabric somewhere else, and so it's now, especially in Italy, it's more difficult to have a relationship between all the makers of a brand. What do you think about this? You think it's important to talk with people and stay together for create a good collection that will last and will be in quality, etc.? Or it's okay also to have a delocalization? And
so you're talking about the actual manufacturers?
Yes, today's situation.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I do a lot of collaborations.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, I've done 30 collaborations now. So obviously, when I go into a company to do collaboration, I have to really understand what they're doing, and really understand what they'll accept and what they won't accept. I mean, if I've done a collaboration with Hackloffs and Peak Performance, that's not a straightforward collaboration because it has to work like he says, it has to be real, and it can't fall apart or anything like that. So I look very deep into these companies when I go in for the collaborations and see how they do things. And usually these companies have a big technical department and they just say, no, you can't do that, yes, you can do that. And I take the advice.
So you're into
so
the process.
I'm really open for it, you know. So I think it's very important.
Yeah. And what about you?
Just picking up on something that Nigel said there about working with companies on what their capabilities are, I think is super important. You want to get in there and really scratch the surface of it and get into what they've always done really well, and then kind of work with them on evolving that. And I think that's ultimately going back to your original question, is like that we all have to think about what we're good at and what we've always been good at and what was our original product and how can we evolve the design idea behind it, and not just start to reinvent the wheel all the time. But you know, I think it doesn't matter which market we're talking about, whether it's the US or European market or the Asian market. If we go back to what we're good at and we've been successful at a time period, we should be able to work with that, and it should always stay relevant. And yeah, keep talking to people all the time. Keep getting information from people and reading the market and see where it's going. But there's no reason why we have to start losing favour or popularity because we stopped, you know, engaging. We have to just keep talking to people all the time.
So the relationship is important, and being inside the and sometimes happen that you didn't reach the fit that you was looking for because maybe the supplier was not able to understand the vibe of the garment you were explaining to him.
Actually, I haven't had that problem generally. I think most of the people I work with are people that really know the stuff, so I don't have a problem with that. And if I do, I try to explain. I take every collaboration I do, I take the fabric in, I take the vintage in, you know.
So you give them information.
They don't need too much confirmation. It's just that when they want to put it into technical fabrics, that's when it becomes a little bit more troublesome for me. And sometimes for these jobs, I have to accept it has to be, you know.
Did it never happen to you, maybe in Levi's Red, which were starting from archive, if I remember well, and create a new shape? It never happened that maybe you cannot reach the good shape or...
No, because we tried to stay as historically correct as possible. So we had to make sure that we understood the shrinkage of the fabric and the original pattern. The only time you could have some artistic license there was on the grading, on the sizing, but we keep the block the same as the original. And sometimes people would say, oh, it's very short and boxy and the fit, and you go, yeah, that's how it used to be and that's how it is now. But you can, on the sizing, you can start to really kind of like push the silhouette up. And because people like to wear clothes a lot looser now than they used to, so yeah.
Okay. So let me see here. Okay, because my questions are also from my side of pattern design.
Let's talk about that.
I want to see how you think about it. And there is something that when you design a garment, which are the features that determine the success of the garment itself? You know, the fit, the fabric, the details. There is something that gives him the...
Yeah, I think Nigel would probably agree, but there's something instinctual that when you go looking at vintage, what shines out as being looking really exciting is probably what's the most relevant for doing for the future. You know, you just see something, you go, oh my god, it's just got something, maybe it's the colour or the fabric or the details on it, and you're just like, oh my god, that is such an amazing piece.
Yeah.
We need to do that one. Yeah. So I don't think we would get so excited about something if it wasn't looking fresh.
I think this is a difference actually between the authentic and the contemporary. So I struggle a bit with the contemporary, but I've had to change. You know, I've been doing it a long time now, so even I have internal problems that we need to be more contemporary as a brand. We can't be so authentic. we can't do the jacket in the same shape. It's a bit short, we have to lengthen it. And also, I am using some semi-synthetic fabrics, but you know, they've usually got cotton and wool, more cotton and wool in them. So that's the way to take the vintage to be contemporary. So, because people today do want contemporary things, even from a brand like mine. So I have to try and mix the two together. And that's where young people who come and work for you are really great to have around, ask their opinion, bounce it off them. So, you know, I mean, without that, you know, you're not going to take the brand anywhere. You need to be passing this on to the young people and mix the two together for me, so I can leave a good heritage behind, but they bring in all the modern side of it. And so I'll be able to start making synthetic garments with the old styles. It's going to look brilliant.
Yeah, to give another key. Okay. And okay, going back to students again, because I have two students of mine here, so I want to
Hi students.
Yeah.
Good.
And what's your recommendation for them for the future in general?
Oh gosh, that's a massive question.
Exactly.
I always say be kind. I think try and think about the world a little bit more than just what's asked of you. Because sometimes you get asked to design product, and you should always ask like the question in your head, like why? Why are we doing this? Why do we need to make more clothes all the time? Why can't we, you know, just find solutions to some of the problems that we face as companies all the time and share those solutions with other companies. Talk to your friends at different companies and say, we found a way to do it better. And that kind of kindness is what I think the world needs in this industry.
So humbleness and exchange of information and
it's
trying
not,
to understand the
sustainability isn't an intellectual property, it needs to be shared out. And if you help your competitors to do things the way that you're doing, you're not losing business, you're strengthening the industry. So that's how I see it anyway, but you know.
And you?
I think I've sort of said what I said before about, you know, bringing young people in, working hand in hand with younger people around you. Okay?
Yeah, okay, so to teach them and show them
Absolutely,
things,
pass
I think
it
is the
on.
most important
I'm a
thing.
great believer in giving out.
Yeah. So, what I see today in the new generation is I think that they are trapped between two things, okay? The sustainability, which is so extreme in words that is probably unpracticable. And also there is another thing that I see is the crazy fashion show look, okay? What is the thing that they have to understand to get into a mentality, a company mentality? Because one day they will work in a company or they will work for a brand. And sometimes I think that they are free, too much free maybe. And it's difficult also when they go into a company, like it was for me, to have somebody who teach you the beginning, because now companies, as I said before, are all not in one place. And what I try to do with them is to try to understand that the daily work I do, so is to collect the information from company and do a product, is very difficult, you know, and you must be with the ground, foot on the ground, okay? So what can you tell to them to make them understand that, okay, fashion is fashion, okay? Because another thing that I say to them is, okay, if you talk me about a sustainable cotton, a organic cotton, and then you do 3-4 samples because you don't know what you are designing, it's not sustainable. First you have to think what you want, okay? Then you have to work on fabric, of course, and then you have to work on shapes, and this is more sustainable. So for me, sustainability is a state of mind, more than materials or, okay. Yeah. So what you can say to them to give them information, to let them go into a company with a more awareness.
I think it's just one of those interesting points where it's so important to have a lot of different people of different generations, different experience coming together And some of the graduates and some of the students now that are coming out of college, they've got so many ideas, and you want to work with them and their energy, and they've got so much passion for doing things. But at the same time, I think as a more senior designer, you also want to help them understand that the evolution of something like a denim, like a 5-pocket jean, that thing I was saying before about how it hasn't actually changed that much. There's some basic principles about what makes a really beautiful pair of jeans, and that just being able to evolve things, whether it's through the fabric or whether it's through the trims or maybe slight changes to construction. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, and don't have to do things completely differently for it to be good. And I do remember, just one more point, I do remember being in a meeting once, and it was back in the days when we were asked to do like extra details onto jeans, you know, little zips and extra pockets and a little zip down here and all this stuff. And I remember someone saying, but if you're all about sustainability and you bought a pair of $29 5-pocket 501s from a great big pile in a bargain basement on Canal Street in New York, and you bought a pair of this new pair of jeans that's got loads of zips and stuff all over it, in 10, 20 years time, you hold those two up, which ones look better? And you're like, the $29 ones from the basement on Canal Street. Because you don't, or trying to add too much to an already good design, you just kill it.
Exactly.
But you have to help sort of show that, and at the same time take all the energy and from the young designers and just help them grow the product in a really natural way, rather than like, okay, let's forget about the past, let's do everything different. Don't need that.
Yeah. Also because most of the new collection now are designed by hip-hop artists, or people that maybe is not into fashion, so they don't know maybe how to work with a fabric. Imagine in the 70s a collection designed by James Brown, like Papa's gonna bring it.
I didn't know James Brown went to fashion school.
Exactly. So I have a last question for you. Thanks God for you.
Thank God.
So if you should write a letter to you in 2050, what will we write to you?
I won't be around in 2050.
Yes, but I guess you.
I'd like to think I would, but I don't think I'll be around in 2050.
Yeah. What do we say to you in the future? In the
What
very
do
long
they say to me in the future?
Yeah.
Oh, God knows.
Knowing how is the present.
I've got 3 kids, so if I listen to anything what they tell me, it's great. So, what am I going to say to them in 2050?
Thinking of how everything is happening today in the world, and
Well, I would say work hard and do something that you really, really, really love doing. I think that if you find something that you really love, and that's the most important thing in life, is you do something that you really love. Because a lot of people, probably a lot of these people here, they can't write very well, they can't spell, so you have to go into the arts. I couldn't do anything when I was 17, so that's why I became a designer. I did something I could do and have fun with, and travel, and then I grew to love fabric, and I grew to love the vintage, all because I love what I do. That's the key. Do what you love.
Exactly. And you?
Yeah, do what you love, and do it better. And so keep looking at the way that you've done things before, and keep trying to analyse whether it's possible that you could do things in a more efficient way. Because we all know from all the years of, producing fashion and clothing, it sometimes it just races into doing things, and I think sometimes just slow down just a little bit and just think about everything, like independently, take it all apart and look at everything and then put it back together again. And don't just think you've done it because you did it once, just keep going back to it and making sure that it all just makes sense, because in 2050, we just want to make sure that we're all working together. And at the moment, I don't feel like we're working together. We're all working separately. So I hope that will be the big change.
Yeah. Okay. So think about what you are doing and try to improve every day.
Improve everything.
Exactly.
Everything can be improved.
Exactly.
It's not all perfect.
Exactly. Okay. So I have done.
Really?
Yeah.
So
So do you have any question for us?
There wasn't going to be any more questions.
Thank you for your help. Yeah. So if somebody has some question for them, we have here.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, here's the microphone, if you know.
Hi guys. Oh, is it on? Yeah. What's your thoughts on hemp fiber and the future of man-made cellulosic fiber like Renewcell and Tencel from both of you?
Do you want me to tell you again? I know you know how much I love hemp.
He said hemp.
We're talking about hemp. So I think we all know that the future is reliant on hemp. I don't think we can't ignore hemp. A lot of the world seems to have started and then retreated slightly on the whole thing about it. There are hold-ups with it, and as most of it seems to be coming through China. But in the end, as the bans get lifted, and we've seen it lifted in Pakistan and the US, and so it doesn't make sense not to do it, and that's all I would say about it. I love it because I love the texture of it and the strength of it, and there's amazing things that you can do with it. But I just weirdly, I don't understand why 100 years after it's like banned, we still don't understand that it's just a miracle stuff. I mean, it's just amazing.
I mean, actually, I love hemp, and I first discovered hemp in Japan. Can't remember how many years ago, but it kept coming up mixed with something. So, to me, hemp is really like another linen. It reacts like another linen. Always looks interesting mixed with fabric. Whenever Emily and I are buying fabrics together, if it's got hemp in, that ticks a big box for me. So I love it. Okay.
And I remember the Levi's Red collection, the one that after become the engineered one was cotton and
Joe's wearing it today.
Was cotton and hemp.
Yeah, it was actually there was one version that was 100% hemp, and then there was it was because it was a range, and then most of the styles in that were a blend of cotton and hemp. But it's such, that was with Nishimbo, and that was back in 1999. And so I thought, God, well, this is like the start of something, but then it kind of disappeared. People just still can't get over that it might look a bit like marijuana or...
Probably. I see people smoking trousers.
You'd have to smoke
Maybe it
a lot
was
of
too
trousers.
early. Maybe it was too early. Or there were no information about it. Probably.
Yeah, but look at all the other things beyond the fact that the fibre can be used so efficiently in fabric. Although the health benefits, there's all the pharmaceutical industry that can use it. It's even a fibre that can be used in building houses. You know, nothing to waste. It grows like weed. You can have 4 crops a year. It needs no water, no irrigation system, no pesticides. Ticks all the boxes.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else got any more questions? No, we're done.
Thank you for you. Any more questions?
Well, thanks all for coming.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Nice to see so many friendly faces.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, this as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys.